Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham, coming to you from Chicago, the location of the Democratic National Convention. I am here with my co-host, Vic Mattis, who's back in Washington, holding down the fort at the Free Beacon. There's a lot going on. It is currently day 3 of the DNC, so we will have a VP Walz speech tonight, but we are coming off the nostalgic night of Obama love last night. And so we'll talk about that. But, oh, and by the way, weirdly, Kamala and Tim Walz were in Milwaukee last night, counter-programming their own convention, which was an interesting choice. So we'll get into that. But before all that, let's just check in. How's it going, Vic?
Hello, Mary Catherine. Very nice to see you. You look very stunning, getting ready for your whole day is like prime time, isn't it? When you walk out,
I'm just a lot of TV, just a lot of TV. Although I did ride across town today in my undercover look because, you know, if you get caught in a crowd, you want to have your big janky jeans and vintage T-shirt on instead of your TV clothes. So
it would be, well, yeah, I mean, but and I think you want to avoid all the paparazzi. Well, you are part of the paparazzi,
of course,
but
yes.
you know, the fans, I mean, you want to avoid the super fans in Chicago. I am doing fine on the mend with my gout. Thank you for people who were asking about that. Just drinking lots of water, avoiding the cured meats. It's the cured meats. It's the vitello tonato that I had. I said on yesterday's episode that I was just going to parcel out some of my observations in Europe. Today, really quickly, before we get into the big day 2 of the convention, I just wanted to talk about one aspect of the trip, which is European toilets.
Yes.
So you've been to Europe, Mary Catherine.
I have.
It's very interesting. There's not a lot of water going on there. You know, they're trying to save. They're trying to save, and I don't know how
they won't freeze the water. They won't give you free access
There's
to
no
the
ice.
water.
There's no ice, and there's not a lot of water in the toilets. And you know, keep the lid down, as they say. I would say since the time that I started going to Europe in like the early '90s, if you will, toilet paper is slowly improving. Like when I was there in 1993, it was, you know, sandpaper, but now it's like the fine texture of a restroom paper towel, which is not much of a texture at all. That's the other thing.
That sounds unpleasant. It sounds unpleasant.
Yeah, we're making progress though. And here's the other thing. These very fine places that we stayed at, very, very fine places, they've got bidets. Yes, the bidet.
Yes.
Now, I haven't mentioned anything about this, you know, to my son. I just, you know, didn't think about it. And I said, you know, and then he comes out of the bathroom. I think we were in Italy, and he's 16, and he just says to me, like sort of like completely earnestly, he goes, so what's the other one for? Like washing your feet? And I said, what? And he goes, yeah, the other time. What is that for? Like washing your feet? And it was like a real Crocodile Dundee moment, you know. And I thought, do I explain it? So I started off and I explained to him what it was, and the look on his face of horror, he was just like, that's disgusting. And I'm like, no, well, you know, I mean, the whole point is so it's not. And anyway, he was baffled by that. But a very interesting thing happened, Mary Catherine, when we were in Germany, in Munich. We stayed at a lovely place, and they had a Toto, which is a brand, I believe it's Japanese, a smart toilet. It's like an R2 unit. It is like an R2. I don't know if
I have heard there are smart toilets, and I'm not sure how smart I want my toilet to be. So I'm happy to hear about this.
You press a button and it's like open sesame. It opens up for you, right? And then it just starts doing things. There's air, there's heat. It'll clean itself randomly, like in the middle of the night. It'll just I think of
that I'm fine with.
Yeah, except for I'm sleeping and then I hear it. And it's just like, yeah, I'm just going to do a little cleaning.
If it's so smart, can't you put it on a timer to do it at some other time?
There might be some function like that. And of course, it has the other functions as well, but I'm too scared to try it, so I don't, you know? But it gets to the point where we were making jokes on the trip where, you know, we imagine that, you know, there's some function where the toilet speaks to you and then starts criticizing your diet or something, you know?
Right.
So anyway, just wanted to pass that on. Smart toilet. I think I like the good old American quiet, silent toilet.
I don't want to converse. I don't want to.
I don't want any interaction. No judging me.
not here for that.
No.
The bidets became sort of popular in the U.S. during the COVID toilet paper crisis of
Really?
2020.
Oh, of course.
Remember, people started upgrading their toilets
Oof.
with that.
Wow.
We did a lot of strange things in 2020. I was realizing last night, and look, this may be a dereliction of duty for my job, but I realized last night, and I tweeted it. 2020 was so weird that I don't even remember the fake conventions. I have no. I had.
Yes.
I tried to dig up something,
Yeah.
and I thought, surely I watched them, right?
Yeah.
I know they were Zoomified or whatever, and nope, I could think of absolutely nothing from the 2020 fake conventions to jog my memory. So I just tweeted that, and I was like, let me just confess. I was teaching my kids. We were at home.
Yeah.
I remember watching the debate. I have no memory of those conventions, and then people started sending me some of the stuff, and I have a vague memory of Melania wearing that lime green dress and thinking only she can wear that color. Turns out that's the brat color, and I still stand by that only Melania can wear it. A lot of people here are trying.
No, and she's ahead of her time too.
Yes, and it happened. I had forgotten that it happened on the White House lawn. Didn't remember that.
They had fireworks.
That's right. And then I guess Joe Biden's, they were just in a building somewhere filming, and the only thing that anyone reminded me of that I remembered was the story of him helping a young man with a stutter. Yeah. I had a vague memory of that. And then Rand Paul and his wife being attacked leaving the fake RNC on the White House lawn. Remember that? That's all I got.
Vaguely,
those are all my memories.
I remember watching it at my parents' house on a small TV with Kate in the guest room, and it must have been the Republican one because they all went up there, but with the Democratic one, I think there's just a lot of green screens.
Yeah, that's what it was. Different people doing performances and whatnot.
Different things. What a depressing
that
time.
just got right past me.
As opposed to now that you're back and you're in the thick of it.
Yeah, I mean, well, and when you're in a physical, this is like sort of the difference between remote learning and being in a classroom, right? Is that being in a physical space gives you memories.
Yeah.
It gives you an experience that you carry with you. Right. And no, I don't recall those other ones at all. So, well,
how are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
You look great.
Thank you. I do, you walk around with your full makeup on all day, just batting my lashes, my giant lashes at everybody. But it's good. It's good. We're having a nice time. As I said, the traverse from the hotel area over to the United Center is a bit arduous, but
yes, it is.
But we're having nice. I went out to a nice dinner last night. This one was like
in the city, of course.
Yes, Japanese dinner with Guy Benson, and I will go out to lunch with John McCormick and possibly Mike Warren of the
How
Dispatch.
Jealous I am.
Today, after we finish our podcast, and before I have to get back over to the stadium for nighttime
send
duties.
them my best, and I hope you go to a good place. Now, I haven't been there, obviously. I was at the convention 28 years ago, but I went to some amazing restaurants with friends there at the time, and one of them was Rosebud, which was an Italian classic, like in a Little Italy style. I might not even be in Little Italy, but it was a great Italian old school restaurant, and they used to have a motto, which is enough to feed the mob, which was a great line.
Yeah. We love that. That. Okay,
and
Rick
Rick Bayless had so many restaurants. That was the Rick Bayless era of like Topolobampo and Frontera Grill. It was like, ooh, this is exciting Mexican. But in any event, have fun.
Well, I guess speaking of my 2020 memories or lack thereof, last night's DNC was a bit of a trip down memory lane.
It was a throwback.
It featured Michelle Obama, Barack Obama, Bernie Sanders spoke. An interesting pairing of Bernie Sanders and then JB Pritzker.
Yeah.
So Bernie Sanders is like, billionaires are the worst. We hate billionaires. Take all their stuff. Nobody earned anything. Right. And then it's like, and up next we have billionaire governor of Illinois.
Yeah. Who proudly owned it.
Oh, no, I mean, this is what Democrats do, right? He's a good billionaire.
Yeah. That's
because
right.
He gives his money to the right things.
That's exactly right.
And that message somehow is supposed to sit right next to the idea that Barack Obama sold us, that Democrats are just people who want you to live your life as you choose.
Right.
You know, they
Exactly.
sure they're going to demonize you if you're a rich person who gives your
Yeah.
money to the wrong political causes.
Right.
But they understand that sometimes people will make different decisions, and they just want everybody to be able to live like
Yeah.
that, man.
It's nice it was nice again, as you say, it was a healthy contrast between the independent socialist from Vermont, talking about how we should
Yeah.
not be beholden to billionaires, and then the heir to the Hyatt hotel empire
Yeah.
telling us, "Hey, I'm a real billionaire." Yay, and everyone's excited,
Well, and like,
They
by
switch
the
gears,
way,
and then the audience switches gears.
no, they're just it's remarkable. It's also remarkable that they're selling this nonsense about being the mind your business party.
Oh.
Like, there are things I don't remember from 2020, like the conventions, but there's plenty I do remember from 2020.
Yeah.
And the idea that you guys are the party of wanting you to make all your health decisions for yourselves and wanting you to live your life with the fullest civil liberties possible,
Sure.
without interference from the government or your neighbors, is wackadoodle. It's
I
wackadoodle.
was wondering if you had been triggered by all the COVID talk during Donald Trump's time and how Donald Trump was downplaying the threat of the virus. And really, when you think about COVID and the terribleness of COVID, think of Donald Trump
No,
and the Republicans.
Look, he clearly made mistakes. I think
it was early. It was crazy.
I think the call from
the
the beginning, unprecedented, to
Yeah.
shut down an American economy was a
Yeah.
terrible, terrible call. I think that they didn't bring the right voices into the room to have an economics perspective alongside the virus controlling perspective of Dr.
Right.
Fauci and Birx, and they should have done better and had a full understanding of what that meant,
Yeah.
as did, for instance, Georgia Governor Brian Kemp or Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, right? They figured this out faster
Yeah.
than Trump did.
He should have run for president. I keep on thinking that.
But the thing is, the thing is, I think the COVID, there's going to be no reckoning on these civil liberties that were taken from people during that time, the pain that people went through.
Right.
No one's going to take responsibility for it. In some places like Georgia and Florida, governors were rewarded for performing well. Very few places were the Democrats and their insane leaders taking these insane liberties from
Right.
people punished for this. And to them, I think they sort of are moving past it rhetorically. Like, we're just a party of freedom. We didn't do any of that stuff. But it was a proof of concept. Like, they enjoyed the new powers that they had.
Oh.
The powers were used for quote unquote good, just
Sure.
like Pritzker's a good billionaire. They used the powers to take away your freedoms for good. And so that's fine. But it does sort of make my brain break when they talk about how when they walk out with like a freedom poster behind them, because the freedom that they want you to have is to unionize and have an abortion. Like, those are the
Right.
two.
There are
Those are the
good
two they're
freedoms
really
and there are
into.
good freedoms and bad freedoms. And you think about, as you mentioned, Governor Andrew Cuomo and his policies for COVID, although he did pay a price, though it didn't have to do with COVID.
It wasn't from the COVID.
It was not
Yeah.
from COVID. You think about Gretchen Whitmer in Michigan, the governor there, and she's beloved. She's beloved. Despite the fact that she told you you can't go to certain stores to buy things for your garden.
But she will, by the way. Her
She
family
will, and her husband will want to go out on his yacht,
I
or
know.
speedboating.
We sound like old crotchety folks.
We
because we're the
are,
only
but
people who care
you're
about
right.
this,
There's no reckoning. Instead, there's retconning, right? I mean, there's the same thing with
Oh,
Tim
I
Walz.
liked
You
that.
like
I'm
that?
stealing that for
you can
TV.
use that tonight. Use that tonight or today, whenever you're on. And same thing with Tim Walz, who is now the vice presidential nominee.
I think the reckoning is coming, whether they like it or not, in the form of the economy, because of the dumping of money into the economy for the past 4 years by this administration in an attempt to just, I don't know what their plan was, but it was inflationary. And today we got a jobs number revised downward for the last year, knocking off some 800,000 jobs from the total of the past year. So what that means is the Bureau of Labor Statistics has these forecasts, or sort of educated guesses, that they give every month for like the payroll growth and how many jobs we're adding. And every month they come up with like a pretty decent number, right?
Yeah.
But then the real numbers come in a month later. So you get all this good press for the decent number that comes out first from Bureau of Labor and Statistics. And then about a month later, you get a revision downward
Yeah, the
of a
corrections.
lot of jobs. So what you have is an official story of the economy
hmm
that is diverging
Right.
from the actual economy.
Right. Again, if this election is about policy, Trump wins hands down. You talk about the economy, you talk about inflation, you talk how expensive it is to, finance a car or for a mortgage rate for a house. And you think about the border policies, you think about the foreign policies. What part of the country, what part of the world is better now than it was 4 years ago? Whether it be the
Right.
Middle East or the Ukraine, Afghanistan, and yet. This could be very much a vibe election where people don't seem to care and they're just going to vote for her anyway because they want to, quote unquote, make history.
Well, and I don't think it's just making history. I think it's like, look, voters said very clearly, give us someone other than Trump and Biden.
Mm,
One party gave them someone other than Trump and Biden,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Now, it's Trump's
The
job
hard
to
way.
prosecute. Yeah, it's Trump's job to prosecute the case against her and not worry about the fact that it's unfair that he's facing someone new.
Right.
It should be a case that's easy to make because people lived a life under the Trump years that did feel economically much better than this does. An interesting thing that's happening, I do want to note, as I said, that the nominee and her vice presidential nominee were not in town for the Obamas.
Yeah.
They went to, actually, now that I say it seems a little racist. You leaving town for the first black president? What's happening? I'm upset about it. At any rate, that's a theme of some of the Obama's oration is that, if you disagree with them in any way, that's the problem. So they're off in Milwaukee doing a speech or gathering at the Pfizer Forum, which is where the Republican National Convention happened. I guess this is supposed to be some genius troll. I don't understand it. It's just
to
an
undo
arena.
what had been done.
I guess it's just an arena in Milwaukee. Like it's an arena in a swing state. Okay.
Yeah.
But what's weird about it is you're counter-programming your own convention.
Yeah.
You have a convention happening here where everybody's having a party and getting together and doing the thing.
What do you want us to cover?
Pretending to be united.
Yeah.
And by the way, part of that was this genius thing they did with the roll call where they had a song for every state, often performed by those artists, including notably Lil Jon for Georgia, doing Turn Down for What, and Petey Pablo for North Carolina, doing Raise Up. It was awesome. I'm not going to sugarcoat it, guys. It was awesome. So they did.
I'm waiting for you to tell me a singer who I do know.
Those guys aren't even new, by the way. Those are the old acts.
Little John came and went, and I'm still here. You know what I mean? I still don't know him.
So they did that, but Kamala's not in the room for that. She's out in Milwaukee doing a whole separate event. Now, some reporting from Jackie Heinrich from Fox suggests that this was sort of a way for them to be respectful of Biden. I don't really buy this.
Well, because of the awkwardness between Biden and Obama?
Because the awkwardness between the Obamas and the Bidens, that Kamala would stay away from this night because of that discomfort. By the way,
what discomfort? I thought everybody gets along together and everybody loves each other. What's going on here?
As I said, I don't know if I said it on the podcast yesterday, this ticket has gone from a problem of cognitive decline to one of cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is another part of it. The message is everybody's on the same page. Everybody's so happy.
Right.
And then you get
we salute you, Joe.
Actual physical divisions between the sitting president and his vice president.
Yeah.
And the former standard bearers who are still very popular and powerful in this party, and the person to whom the torch is being passed. They're in separate cities. They're in separate states.
It reminded me of towards the end of Godfather Part 2 and Michael Corleone and his brother Fredo have the bitter break. And what he says to Fredo is, and if you visit our mother, I need a day's notice in advance so I will not be there. It's, okay, well, this is what happened, I guess.
Well, and it's, look, I don't begrudge the Democrats their moment of happiness in the room, especially when Lil Jon is involved. And, you get to have your party. However, do I think if Donald Trump counter-programmed his own convention by being in another state doing another rally, that coverage of that would be like, oh, this seems totally normal?
Let me ask
it's not
you this.
normal.
Was the the big part of their rally in Wisconsin at Fiserv, was it happening at night, prime time, during the day when other
I think
speakers were?
it was at night. It was not a daytime event,
Oh,
which I
that's
was like,
not good.
why don't you do a daytime event and then
Yeah,
come back
yeah, yeah.
here?
While people are still mulling around
Right,
before it
right.
gets into the big thing, that's a very concerning optic if you're a Democrat.
Yeah, it's strange.
Yeah.
So so there, anyway, the New York Times, of course, covers it. Harris, in a show of force, holds a large rally 80 miles from her convention. That seems odd.
Yeah.
That seems odd.
Yeah.
They call it a two-city rally. I guess we're supposed to buy that, like, they're
Oh,
just
yeah.
so powerful
Yeah,
that they can do
it
two
spilled over.
rallies.
It spilled over from Illinois into Wisconsin.
That's how big it is.
Yeah, it's how
Yeah.
big.
Oh my gosh. God, the lead on this New York Times piece is it's a work of art. Democrats managed to be in two places at once on Tuesday night, holding a ceremonial roll call at their Chicago convention to celebrate Vice President Kamala Harris as their party's nominee, while she herself rallied supporters roughly 80 miles north in Milwaukee.
Mary Catherine, considering that, I believe the vice presidential nominee, Governor Walz, is going to speak today. Yes, he's speaking
Yes.
tonight, of course, because tomorrow is already the big night. I assume that his wife will have some sort of a speaking role, maybe Gwen Walz. When
I guess.
you
Yeah.
mentioned the New York Times just now in their lead, I had it here. I took a screenshot of the New York Times puff piece on Walz's wife. And
Mhm.
here's what it says.
Oh, yes.
It says, "Meet Gwen Walz, the ultra-competent political spouse." And then as it goes down, I think it's like and it's in the subhead or somewhere down lower in the piece, it says, "The only question is, why isn't she running? Like, we do have concerns. Oh my gosh, what's the concern? Our concern is she isn't running, because she's so good."
Ultra competent.
Yeah.
These I
It's
have some
they're
have some
working
self-respect,
they are
people.
working overtime. And
Me-
maybe it works. Maybe it works because
It might. Well, meanwhile, although I will say some of the frequent lying by Tim Walz has broken through to a certain degree.
this is an interesting
and,
thing. Yeah.
And this is something that CNN and the New York Times reported, which is
Okay.
they got into the IVF discussion.
Yeah.
So Walz on many occasions has used IVF as a political cudgel. JD Vance and Trump have never suggested they want to do away
Mhm.
with IVF. In fact, many Republicans are involved in enthusiastically
of
embracing
course,
it
of
because
course.
of this, to respond to this charge that they're against it, right?
Right.
Now, there are religious people who have objections to IVF, right?
Yeah.
But Walz just puts it out there like, I wouldn't have my children without IVF.
And he says
therefore
IVF.
and he says IVF. And therefore JD Vance wouldn't, if he had it his way, my kids wouldn't exist. Which, again, he hasn't argued for banning IVF.
Yeah.
It turns out, as reported by the New York Times and CNN, thank you for doing that
Right.
work,
Props.
that they actually didn't have IVF. Those children were conceived by IUI,
Mhm.
which is a different method that does not create extra embryos, which is the
right.
ethical issue that pro-life people have with IVF, is that you end up with these extra embryos that are life and souls, and
Right.
what becomes of them,
Right.
right?
And kept in this state.
So
or
a religious
Yeah.
family
Yeah.
will choose IUI because that doesn't involve creating extra embryos.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
what happened is that Walz loses the political point if he concedes that he had IUI instead of IVF. So he did what he always does,
Mhm.
which is he used a little bit slippery language. He repeats this thing that gives everybody the impression that this is
Yeah.
what happened.
This
And then
is
when
his
you look,
MO, but gives himself just enough wiggle room to say,
Mhm.
"No, I didn't specifically say it."
and then you look into the facts, and it turns out the facts do not match what he's been saying.
Right.
And to lie about your military service and the conception of your children,
Yeah.
it's a lot, man.
It's
a lot.
It's okay. Well, first of all, you heard the Dem spin, the comms spin on this, right? The reply to all this. Oh, wait a minute. It wasn't IVF. It was IUI. And the comms person for Walz said, quote,
Hmm.
"Governor Walz talks how normal people talk." That's the reply.
Okay.
Yeah, if it's one thing, it's another,
Governor Walz lies like a normal person lies. No, listen.
But there's a pattern.
Every single person who's had fertility treatments of any kind ends up having an encyclopedic knowledge of fertility methods.
Of course.
And he knows very well the difference between, just like he knows his rank isn't command sergeant major, he knows the difference between IUI and IVF, and he used IVF to make a point to hit Vance with it, and now he's getting called out. So like there have been these liabilities for him that have broken through. Does it make any difference because he's the vice presidential nominee? I'm not really sure. But anyway, so they were off in Milwaukee, and I guess they're back tonight. Meanwhile, last night here we had the stars of the show. The stars of the whole party, Michelle and Barack Obama, who
the good old days,
it must be said, are both very good at this gig.
Yeah, it's the opposite of, the case for his presidency and his favorability always had to do, in my opinion, less on policy and more on presentation. And it's the reverse of Trump, which is he'll say things that are maddening. And at the same time, like, hey, those 4 years were not bad. But in the Obama case, they're very good at what they do. Please. Sorry.
Yes, quite. No. So what struck me about last night, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, is that it seemed to me that Michelle Obama has eclipsed him almost entirely.
Yeah, really interesting.
And I think she's better than he is.
Yeah. Yeah, now, she towers over him both literally and figuratively now.
By the way, and I said this about AOC, she looked fantastic. The outfit was amazing. Yeah. It read perfectly on TV. You could see the cool belt above the podium. Like, that was all planned. It looked amazing.
The cool belt.
It looked awesome. She did a really nice job. She's become an extremely good speaker.
Yeah.
I think it could just be that I've heard Barack Obama shtick so many times and hers less.
Not so much. Yeah, sure.
That I am more willing to listen.
Yeah.
And she sounds more genuine to me.
Well, she comes off as certainly as likable.
Yes, for sure.
More so than Kamala.
Oh, I mean, there's worlds beyond.
Do you think they wonder if they should have, if they had a chance to do a quote unquote open mini lightning round primary, the George Clooney strategy or recommendation, that in an alternative universe, they would have preferred her, Michelle, over Kamala?
Oh, look, I think that anyone right of center in this country is lucky that she does not want to subject herself to running.
I mean,
because I think she would be well liked. I think that she's good at communicating.
She and George W. Bush are friends.
Yeah, no, people have a fuzzy sort of warm memory of her. I know there are plenty of people who don't like her. I don't have very strong feelings about her, aside from the fact that she's skilled at this. But I thought it was interesting that she felt like the star last night. He didn't feel like the star.
Yeah. I do wonder, when you combine their presence last night, and it's interesting is that they spoke last night as opposed to, because Bill Clinton is speaking tonight and not the other way around. Between them not being that Kamala and Walz were not there while the Obamas were there, I do wonder if the Obamas are going to be, they said very supportive things, obviously, of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, obviously. But if they're sort of indifferent about whether or not Kamala Harris, wins, and if they don't, then 2028 is open. There have to be a lot of people pressuring Michelle Obama to consider.
I don't think she wants to do it. She lives a great life.
Oh, I wouldn't.
She lives a fantastic life. There's a clip in her speech, which I should play just because it really crystallizes the hypocrisy here about her mother being suspicious of those who have more than they need. Let's play that one.
You see, my mom, in her steady, quiet way, lived out that striving sense of hope every single day of her life. She believed that all children, all people have value, that anyone can succeed if given the opportunity. She and my father didn't aspire to be wealthy. In fact, they were suspicious of folks who took more than they needed. They understood that it wasn't enough for their kids to thrive if everyone else around us was drowning.
The Obamas have some 4 different residences in 4 different U.S. states, I believe.
I was going to say.
Their Hawaii compound has 3 houses.
Yeah.
on the compound.
Yeah. Be suspicious is right.
Perhaps we should be suspicious of them. I also think that the Obamas have a large amount of money, a great lifestyle, and not insignificant political power doing exactly what they're doing right now.
Without having to actually be the front and center and
Yes.
taking the brunt of
In
whatever
fact,
policy.
you could look at last night as an illustration of the fact that Kamala Harris isn't here because she doesn't need to be here. We're the people in charge of this party.
Ooh.
Now, I don't know if that's true or not, because my take on the Obamas, like, some people think they've been running the whole show with the Biden administration and all, but there's all this tension between Biden and the Obamas. And I also think the Obamas enjoy living their life in their many, many houses with their celebrity friends so much. How deeply engaged are they in any of this?
Mhm.
They like to give the speeches. They're good at doing it. I don't know. I'm sort of torn, but it did feel like last night, like, Kamala and Tim, we don't need you here.
Yeah. I mean, no, that they dominated the night. I mean, if you look at the obviously the coverage, the media coverage is just fawning. It's
I mean, as always, Michelle Obama told me that Kamala's story is my story, and I don't see that. There is this attempt to sell her as like this very middle class, like, came up from nothing. And yes, her mom was a single mom for a long time because they divorced from her dad, but her parents were two academics.
Yep.
And she lived in a Tony neighborhood of Quebec for much of her childhood. So I don't think that her story is my story, and I don't think it's middle class in the way that many people think of it. John Podhoretz reminded me in his tweets last night, I believe, that Michelle Obama, who was speaking very warmly of her mother, and that was a very nice way to start this speech, because she talks about losing her mother and humanizes all of this and tells a similar, like, go get 'em story of her youth and her mother's youth. Her mom was like the vice president of a bank. So it's not, we're giving an impression that these things are a little bit more middle class than they are. Michelle went after the affirmative action of generational wealth, which I get is a knock
again, Pritzker.
Yeah.
Let me just say,
I know. Like, no, that's good wealth. That's good wealth. That's well-behaved wealth.
Yeah, because they're
bad wealth.
As long as you're giving to the right people and the right causes, you're cool. Yeah.
I also thought this part bugged me in her speech. She talks about when you're in public service, as Kamala has been and as the Obamas have been for a long time, or if you're just a regular person. But I think she was specifically talking about public service. She says, if we bankrupt a business, we didn't get a second or third chance. First of all, bankruptcy is there for a reason, so that people can get second and third chances. That's actually it's one of the geniuses of our system, actually, that you can go there and then come back. I know she's like picking on Trump, but public service, working in government, is the place to bankrupt anything and pay absolutely no price for it, because it wasn't your money. It wasn't your risk. You didn't have to make anything succeed. That's why when Kamala backs billions of dollars for electric chargers and like 8 are built, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter.
That's right.
She has a pattern of these kinds of things throughout her career. That one just cracked me up. Like, oh yeah, the government is so good at accountability when you misspend the money.
Yeah. Again, but what I find maddening after 2 days of this now is that they want you to think that somebody else has been in power for the last 3.5 years.
Yes.
Or even further, as a lot of people have pointed out, when they complain about how terrible things are, that they haven't been in power for 12 of the last 16 years.
She referred, I believe, to the despair that people feel, and that some people are desperate for new things. And it's like, and Barack Obama said that the sequel is always worse than the original. He's referring to Trump, but y'all are running for a sequel right now.
Yeah.
Harris is the sequel.
Yeah, she is the sequel, right? Exactly.
To the last 4 years.
Like, somehow you're supposed, when they talk about how terrible things are, they only mean between 2017 and 2021. Is that it?
Yeah, we skipped the last 4 years.
Just checking.
I will say both Obamas really super on message about not taking the election for granted. And they are good at firing people up and saying, you need to do the work. You need to not get discouraged. Don't boo, vote. They really hammer that. And it is a message that you didn't hear as clearly at the RNC. Not that everybody's taking the thing for granted, but the action item is very clear with the Obamas. And that came through in both speeches.
Did you happen to notice this interview of Trump the other day where they asked him about Obama and he actually had nice things to say?
No, what did he say?
And he just happened to say, maybe we could find a
Let's find the clip of that and play it for ourselves.
I like him. I think he's a nice gentleman, but he was very, very weak on trade. If you take a look at what happened to our country trade-wise, it was a disaster. Take a look at Japan, take a look at China, take a look at what happened with some of these countries, what they did. But I happen to like him. I respect him and I respect his wife.
So he was just like, I respect the guy. He's a nice guy. The only thing he dinged him on was trade. But it was weird that he didn't have that personal animosity that he has for Hillary or for Biden or for Kamala for that matter. And it made me wonder if they have ever communicated in their post presidencies or whatnot. But it was like interesting. It was just really interesting for Trump to say that because, of course, how many times was Trump mentioned in the last 2 nights? A lot by every speaker going after him hard and saying some really ridiculous and terrible things, whether it be Steve Kerr or Jeremy Raskin or whatever. And the thing is, they know, and we know that Trump is watching this. He can't resist. He's not going to turn it off and say, oh, I don't care for this. He's watching, and it's driving him nuts.
Yeah, it's almost as if, speaking about Obama, Trump reveals that he's a lifelong Democrat who became a Republican.
Yeah, just for that one time.
Who became a Republican after the Obama years.
Yeah.
No, I think, look, would that Donald Trump would put certain animosities and hangups in the rearview mirror as he apparently has his hangups about Barack Obama. That would do everyone a lot of good. There was a couple moments in the Michelle Obama speech and Barack Obama speech that it's a lot of projection going on. Like, we don't get to change the rules so that we always win.
Wait a minute.
That was Michelle. Yeah. Really, Democratic Party that literally changed the rules in 2020? Like, I don't think the election was stolen because I don't think it was stolen in the suburbs of Atlanta, right?
Yeah.
But y'all changed the rules on the fly.
Yeah.
In 2020.
Yeah.
Y'all changed the rules of your nomination process on the fly in 2024. So don't give me this about we don't get to change the rules so we always win. Then she said, by the way, great line about the black jobs. I think it's a stupid hit because I don't think what Trump said about black jobs was hateful or meant in any sort of dumb way, but it's a crowd pleaser to be like, has anybody told? We can play that clip.
I want to know who's going to tell him that the job he's currently seeking might just be one of those black jobs.
Michelle Obama also said, in an echo of her, when they go low, we go high, she said that going small into like insulting stuff is unpresidential.
Interesting.
But then when her husband took the stage immediately after, minutes into his speech, he was making a dirty joke about the size of Trump's crowds, but he was using a hand gesture that told us he was talking about something else. And I thought
but they all loved it, and they were suddenly, it was like, you know what? It's funny when he tells it.
Well, look, again, dirty jokes for good, right? Yeah. These are fine. When Trump does it, it's bad.
Right.
I think, for my money, the crudeness from Trump or this style of thing from Obama, no thank you. I also think it didn't work in general because Michelle Obama's speech, maybe she set him up. Michelle Obama's speech looks like the soaring, important, dignified speech. Pulls a few heartstrings. His doesn't look like that after that moment.
No, you could have reversed it where he spoke first and then she followed.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I just thought he did himself no favors in that moment. And it's not even a good enough joke to waste that capital on.
No,
right?
but everybody's talking about it now, as you can see.
That's true. That's true. But do you want
and
everybody
it's all
talking about
positive too. It's all he gets away with it. Yeah.
But do you want everybody talking about the fact that you made a peen joke on the national stage? I'm not sure you do, but whatever. This is what they're doing. And their argument is that like Trump goes low, so we're just going to go low now, I guess.
Yeah, and that's cool. I want to say that there was a great sort of redeeming moment yesterday, and I think it was yesterday, right? Where James Taylor, who got bumped, he finally got back on, and he was
Thank
able
goodness.
to play a new rendition of Fire and Rain. And I thought that was great. And you can almost predict that's the one, because I think the one he played for John Kerry was You've Got a Friend.
Yes, it was. I think so. I think that's correct.
But I thought it would have been funny if James Taylor instead played the song Mexico. Just you know.
Do you think James Taylor was mad that Petey Pobb got the North Carolina nod in the musical roll call instead of him?
Yes, definitely. JT was mad. Oh, I forgot to ask you, Mary Catherine. Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
You've been there now for this is day 3 in Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you yet to use, or have you already used, the gender neutral prayer room?
Oh, I haven't found it. I have
You
not
need
come
to
across
find it.
that. I will look
See what
for
happens.
It's like gender and religion neutral. By the way, speaking of religion, can we play the Van Jones clip? Look, this is Van talking about on CNN the Obama speeches.
I didn't know how much I missed them. I missed them. I missed that. I miss hearing that. Biden did something important last night, and he transferred the machinery of the party to Kamala Harris. The Obamas renewed the magic of the movement. That's what they were transferring. And they did it beautifully. They did it powerfully. Obama used nostalgia in a beautiful way. He didn't say, make America great again, we're going to go back. He reminded everybody of the best things about our families, about our neighborhoods. That was beautiful. And then Michelle, she wasn't doing the minister role. She was really doing the coaching role, in that she called it right out. She said, you guys, she talked about the affirmative action of generational wealth. She talked about the luxury of whining and cheating that other people don't have. But she didn't stop there. She also called the left up. And she said the whining on the left needs to stop. The Goldilocks, they're not perfect. This was a masterful act of leadership. It was a sacred task. They took it on well. It was like an oasis. I didn't realize I had been in a spiritual desert until they created that oasis on that stage, and they did a beautiful job tonight. David?
I often agree with Van Jones's analysis. I think he is honest.
Mm-hmm.
He is left as the day is long, at least as far left as I am, right? But we often would have the same takes on politics because we would be analyzing honestly, not talking about our own beliefs. So I think he's trustworthy. Here, I just think we could use so much less of this.
Well, he was honest about his love.
Yeah.
I mean,
I just think I understand the temptation to look for redemption in these moments and just feel better about the country. But I was not in a spiritual desert because I do not look for spiritual succor at a political convention.
Right. I mean, it's a more refined way, or the reference to the oasis there, this oasis. It's a more refined way than Chris Matthews talking about the thrill up his leg. I get it. You know what I mean?
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So fine. And he takes it to a different level, but just a level of cringe. And I wonder on that panel if there was this uncomfortability, but I tend to think that, with the exception of Scott Jennings, who probably was, just rolling his eyes, I think everyone else, Dana Basher was like, yeah, this is great. This is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, the whole shtick doesn't work for me, particularly Barack Obama's. As I said, I know that Favreau didn't write this speech probably, but as I started saying like 3/4 of the way into the Obama years, I can't believe Favreau is still getting laid off this shit.
It's an outrage.
Because it does feel warmed over. It feels like the same trick every time. As I forget who said this, but he's like an arsonist in a field of straw men. Like, it's just like the evil Republicans and how they want you to drink poisonous water, but also love your fellow man and like get along with fellow citizens. It's this, he turns on a dime on that stuff because, you know, you have to show respect to your fellow citizens, and we all need to get along and learn things from each other so that we can prevent the evil half of the country from having any power. Yeah. Like it wears thin for me.
It does.
But I will give Van this. It is sort of refreshing just to watch people who are good at this. Like you won't get that from Kamala. I don't think she's in danger of being good at it. She could do okay.
She also seems, I think, to be beginning to lose her voice.
Yeah, by the way, we should play the most recent clip of her since she never takes questions. She took a question about her economic plans, and the question was decent because it said, how are you going to pay for this?
Right. Good question.
Let's play that.
You unveiled some economic policies last week.
Yeah.
Can you explain how you're going to pay for those? And can you give us a sense of what other policies you want to unveil going forward?
Sure. Well, I mean, you just look at it in terms of what we are talking about, for example, around children and the child tax credit and extending the EITC. It's at $6,000 for the first year of a child's life. The return on that investment in terms of what that will do and what it will pay for will be tremendous. We've seen it when we did it the first year of our administration. We reduced child poverty by over 50%. So that's a lot of the work. And then what we're doing in terms of the tax credits, we know that there's a great return on that investment. And when we increase home ownership in America, what that means in terms of increasing the tax base, not to mention property tax base, what that does to fund schools, again, return on investment. I think it's a mistake for any person who talks about public policy to not critically evaluate how you measure the return on investment. When you are strengthening neighborhoods, strengthening communities, and in particular the economy of those communities, and investing in a broad-based economy, everybody benefits, and it pays for itself.
Well, there you go, Vic.
You know, it's like she's Kramer in Seinfeld when he's talking about tax write-offs. You just write it off, Jerry. You just write off, and finally Jerry's like, do you even know what that means? And so it's just lots of return of when in doubt. And you can tell, obviously somebody said, if they ask you this question, return on investment. And she just kept on repeating that ROI over and over and over again. But again, it's like, you know, I appreciate the sentiment. It's how I explain to Kate my trips to Vegas. It pays for itself, I say.
It pays for itself.
I go there and then I'll make it up, maybe even double.
The truth is that the plan, such that it is to dump a bunch more money into the economy and hope that you don't notice that it's inflationary.
Trillions. We're talking trillions of dollars. More than Biden. Yeah.
And then also, by the way, it's interesting to me to the extent she's running away from Biden, she's running to the left.
Yeah.
And I have noticed a pattern, Vic, and correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think I am. I sort of checked yesterday. Anything that comes out of her actual mouth is her running to the left. Things that come from spokespeople is her tacking to the center. She never herself tacks to the center unless you want to count one throwaway line about getting rid of regulations in that speech she did in North Carolina.
Yeah.
Which, like, is there one time she's ever gotten rid of an economic regulation in her entire career or advocated for it?
Right.
I do not think there is. So unless you count that one line coming out of her mouth, I think with she herself tacks left, her spokespeople go center.
Yeah.
So
I think that's how that's her the true nature of herself. She reveals. And again, it's like the opposite of, I remember Joe Biden talking about Taiwan and being very forthright and open about, like, yeah, we will come to its defense. They deserve to be independent, whatever it was he had said, violating the one China policy and this whole to do. And then the expert and then his advisors have to say, no. We, he didn't mean this or he didn't mean that. And she's the other way. Obviously, I think we know how she feels about, Israel. And so
I think we can guess. Speaking of which, there's some coverage now of Republicans pounced on these protests and they kind of fizzled out and whatever. The protests are ongoing. They have been violent at times. I'm glad they haven't taken over the whole city. That's wonderful news. The United Center is sort of set away from things so that they can do their destructiveness over there. But here's the thing, at the Republican National Convention, there was no giant protest from our own side. Did you guys notice that? Like, I just think there's a pretty distinct difference there. They do have to worry about this left flank. They do have to appease them to some extent. And there were some real bad people out there.
There were
We
Hamas
should,
flags. Forget about the Palestinian flag. There were Hamas flags in the crowds, and you get the sense, the way it's very carefully organized by all these various groups, that they plan to escalate their presence, culminating in tomorrow, meaning Thursday, when Kamala Harris is here, in order to make clear that she is, that she has been complicit. This is hard to believe, but they believe she's complicit with quote unquote Genocide Joe in helping Israel, and that we need to arms embargo. That's what they want. Ceasefire. Stop giving weapons to Israel. Let them die. Is that the third part? Let the Jews
also,
die. I don't know.
remind me who it is who keeps rejecting ceasefires.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's Hamas.
Yeah,
They
that's right.
won't do a deal. I want to play, I mentioned it earlier, but I do want to play Barack Obama saying this sequel thing, right? By the way, speaking of projection, one other line from him, he notes, referring to Trump, a guy whose act has gotten pretty stale. And I thought, same dude, same. but here's his part about America and the sequel coming to us.
From a guy whose act has, let's face it, gotten pretty stale. We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos. We have seen that movie before, and we all know that the sequel is usually worse. America's ready for a new chapter. America's ready for a better story. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
Okay, one of those lines is, America's ready for a new chapter. Why are they ready for a new chapter, guys?
Because the last 3.5 years. Whoa, wait a minute. We need to turn the page because of, again, 2017 to 2021. The last 3.5 years, don't even think about it. It didn't happen.
Exist.
We just know Trump is still the president, and we got to kick him out of office. That's the whole point. This is the whole if elected thing. Wait till I come into power and enter office. All the things I can do, because right now I'm not doing anything.
Even Jim Messina, who is a former Obama campaign guy and advisor, on Fox this morning basically acknowledged that, yes, the strategic thing they're trying to do is ignore the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, that's right.
Pretend they do not exist.
Right.
That they are running against an incumbent, even though
and he's got
they
like 5
are
or
the
6
incumbent.
months. He's got like 5 more months to go or whatever it is. Joe Biden is still the president of the United States, currently vacationing in California. Do you think he's watching the convention?
Between 10 and 4? I don't know. Not the late nights. That's
not
for
a great
sure.
slot. Again, if you put yourself in the shoes of the Trump campaign, although that is rather awkward mixed metaphor there, the campaign strategy should be fairly straightforward.
Right.
You show these pictures of these people protesting and burning the American flag. You compare what they want, which is price controls Venezuela, Tim Walz, Minneapolis burning. Is this what you want?
Well, that's the thing to me is like, this is a parade of people who have presided over failures.
Yeah.
Up to perhaps the worst of them all, the mayor of Chicago.
Yeah.
Right.
Brandon Johnson. Yeah.
Yes. It's like, these are people who you don't want these results. And yet, if they can put on a good enough face, perhaps people will say, let's give them another chance. And by the way, the other side of the coin is if Trump puts on a bad enough show to turn people off, right? I have listened to him a couple days in a row, and he does seem like, though low energy, he's sort of sticking to the script.
That's what you. But
some of these events.
It's preferable because he seems so much more just normal when he's not having to put on the shtick, which he somehow keeps on thinking is necessary. But really, if you're trying to win the people over in the middle, it's better to be just sort of the normal. And people talk about this all the time, normal Trump. For example, if you ever watched the documentary Get Me Roger Stone, and Trump is interviewed throughout in that documentary, he's perfectly like sane and normal. And the last thing I wanted to say about this, by the way, Mary Catherine, is if they're going to attack him as saying that Trump is seeking a sequel, and sequels are rarely good, Trump's argument should be that if he's a sequel, it's The Empire Strikes Back, which is a really good movie. So.
It's a really good movie.
Yeah.
No, I just think that the jobs number is their problem, right?
Yeah.
Trump is the GOP's problem and his ability to put a message together.
And it's a problem, yeah.
And it is. He's polling better than he has in 2020 and 2016. Yeah. Those things still matter. He's running closer in this race than he did at this point in either of those races. But if he can't make a sustained case against her, and she is able to separate herself from her current administration, people might go for a different figure just because she's a different figure.
Right.
The question is whether those jobs numbers, the inflation numbers, the invasion of reality, which is 818,000 jobs removed from the total over the last year, if that invades enough and people just go like, I don't know if I can do this, Kamala.
Can I ask you for a prediction?
What's that?
I'll
try.
After Thursday, next week, what do you think the numbers are for what do you think the bounce is going to be for Kamala? Because they talk about the honeymoon, and I've said this several times. It's like a 2-part honeymoon. This honeymoon is basically going on 34, 35 days now. And it has to come to an end.
It ain't going to come to an end in the next week.
But it's not going to come to an end in the next week. What numbers, what do you think we're going to be looking at? Because I have a thought, but I want to know what you think first.
I'll just go 3-point bump.
I'm going to say 5.
Yeah. I mean, I think now that you say that, that might be more likely. So I'll go. I'm doing Prices Right. I'm going on the under.
You're just under the win. Yeah. Okay. Fine.
But no, I think that the momentum of her campaign could be very real in the next couple weeks. Even like as I said from the beginning, even if the euphoria is just euphoria in the form of relief, euphoria can move people.
Yeah.
It matters, right? Yeah. And this has been a pretty decent show. I think Democrats are good at having a party. They got cool people to put on stage. They got good music. In the room, it's good. I think it's interesting that David Plouffe said that they're going to continue the democracy is in peril theme. Frankly, Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, there wasn't as much of that apocalyptic talk.
No, people want positive. Particularly, again, if you want to talk about, the doom and gloom, again, you're talking about what? That the last 4 years have been terrible?
Yeah.
So
that's what made their speeches, I think, better than some of the other ones the other night. So if Plouffe is correct and they're going to continue the doom and gloom, democracy is in peril argument, I don't think that will work that well for Walz and Kamala. Yeah. But so far, the campaign has not been deeply invested in doing that. So I thought that was an odd signal from him.
I would also, again, if I were a handler for that campaign, and I would hate to do that, be on the working for Kamala Harris, for everything we hear about her, I would be very concerned that she's getting hoarser and hoarser, HOARS, because she sounds like she's losing her voice. If she loses her voice or she can't talk by Thursday night, she's in trouble. And she's going around, she's doing these things. Obviously, she's not taking questions, but the rallies and things
that's going to be the new thing. We can't give her questions because we have
can't talk.
She has to be engaged in self-care. Okay.
Self-care. She got the tea and the honey. We'll talk. You know what? November 7, November 8, we're going to schedule an interview, and she's going to reveal her policy
November 8.
That's when it gets better. It takes that long.
That's how long. Yeah, she's supposed to do, by the way, if you're keeping track, it's the 21st of August. They said she'll give an interview like maybe around the end of this month. That's
fine. Is that fine? Because I want to know, is all this talk about, the price controls, et cetera, which you get again.
Oh, and unrealized capital gains.
Yeah.
That's yesterday's revelation.
Yeah, that's right.
Wealth you don't have, you'll be paying taxes on it.
Okay. And I don't even know if we even mentioned the housing subsidies. And she comes from a state, California, which has the highest housing subsidies, and property values are at the highest ever. It's the most expensive place to get a house. I'd like to know, is this just a sop to progressives? Or again, does she mean it? And she has a terrible understanding of macroeconomic policy. If only people could ask questions.
I'd really like to know.
Okay.
I think they don't know about economics, and they also don't care. They're just like, does this sound good? Let's do it.
Yeah.
More money. Throw more money into the economy. Again, I'm genuinely concerned that these things won't work. That part matters to me. When just like with Trump's tariffs, they will do the opposite of what he thinks they're going to do.
Right.
These things will do the opposite of what she says they're going to do, and people will get hurt.
Well, it's funny because I think Axios just had a piece saying, don't call it price controls, and it's
the community note on that was like, actually, they're price controls.
Kind of is.
And I believe the writer of that piece had called something similar price controls.
In another country. Yeah.
I mean, they just are price controls. We don't have to create new realities, guys.
Yeah.
Anyway. All right. Well, the Obamas did a good job.
And now they can go back to Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah,
Happily ever after.
to the
right?
house that is very strictly only what they need.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure there's no wind farm, right? The wind farm failed, the effort to set up the wind farm off the coast of Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah, rich people are not into
Yeah,
that.
you pick up a phone and that's it. It's done. Okay, I do have if we're ready to move on, I have just one quick shout out to a listener, Carl Catlin, who suggested when we were talking about military cemeteries and going through World War II battle sites, to read Ernie Pyle, who was the great famous World War II correspondent. And in fact, during the staff ride, I talked about playing Major John Howard, who secured Pegasus Bridge. Another of the participants, he's excellent. He's a journalist, and he played Ernie Pyle, the famous World War II correspondent, and highly recommended reading his work. You can look it up, find it on Amazon. He was a real celebrity and he didn't want to be a celebrity.
Right.
The one thing I have in common with Ernie Pyle is a love for drink. He loved to drink. I would have been different. I would have been happy to stay in like Guam and Hawaii with all the fans. But he wrote a very famous piece that he did not himself anticipate would be the most memorable thing that he had written. It was on the death of Captain Waskow, Waskow. And he was just a captain and he died in Italy. And his reporting on his death and the reaction of his men was so powerful that the person that you have to read the story to the guy who then types it in, the military guy types it in, they send it off to the censors, and they're pretty tough, these guys. The person typing it stopped and started crying, and it was just really powerful. And I actually visited the grave of Captain Waskow when we were at the American Cemetery. And Ernie Pyle went on because he wanted to see how the Marines were doing in the Pacific. He was done. He could go home, and instead he stayed and went to Okinawa and got killed. So again, a great American hero, again, among journalists too, just a legend. So look, Ernie Pyle. That's it. Mary Catherine, enjoy your lovely lunch with our friends.
Thank you.
And
I shall.
That wraps up this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorino Mattis.
I am at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube and Instagram. I did want to shout out the 9/11 Heroes runs, which are coming up in September for the Travis Manion Foundation. They are 5Ks. Y'all can do it. You can do a 5K. You can even walk it. That's fine too. Ruck it. There's all sorts of choices. They're all over the country. Go to 911heroesrun.com. Sign up. Join us. You get a great t-shirt. You get a great community. You get a great day in the sun with the fun with your family. It's good times. 911heroesrun.com. Please join me. I actually need to do some training. My cardio is not what it used to be. Okay.
You could do 3.1. So you could do that in your sleep.
I could do it, but it's not going to be good. Thank you for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.